Good morning. Welcome to this webinar around using data and AI for creating personalized experiences in food and agri value chain. Today we are hosting this webinar live from Microsoft Studio in cooperation with CRM partners. Here with me in the studio is Merwin Oldhoff. He is a data and AI lead at CRM Partners. And in the call we have Peter Kuppen, who is an agri specialist at CRM Partners. A very short introduction on this webinar. Please use the chat window to ask questions. The questions will be answered live if we know the answer, otherwise we will come back to that. So it helps us to make a lively conversation for you and to also surface insights that you might have towards other viewers. So that's one. Second, the presentation will be shared afterwards. No need to take screenshots or to record everything. We will share the presentation afterwards in a PDF format. So please, again, welcome to Merwin. Merwin, can you shortly introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Merwin Oldhoff. I'm 30 years old and have been working at CRM partners for about 5 years now. Currently, I'm working as a practice manager or data and AI lead, specifically in the area of data. And we've been putting a lot of focus on the agri market, so that's why I'm here today.
Okay, thank you. Welcome here from the studio. And then from remote, Peter Kuppen, can you please introduce yourself as well?
Well, thank you, Jan. I'm Peter Kuppen. I'm working for a little more than 5 years at CRM Partners, and I'm working as a consultant, especially in agricultural vertical. So I'm quite involved with the agri vertical. I'm 49 years old and I live in Brabant, in an agricultural part of the Netherlands.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jan Brouwer. I'm responsible within Microsoft Netherlands for our business applications division, and on top of that I'm spokesperson for the food and agri industry, and I will be your host today. So for a little setting the scene, in food and agri we see a couple of challenges, which are global challenges, as this is a global market. We need to feed more people. 9.6 billion people, in 2050. We need to preserve more and more scarce resources. Sustainability is becoming a very large theme, and yes, I know it's a bit in the background right now because of the COVID virus, but that will come back once we conquered that issue. And on top of that, there's also a global shift in diet and taste, which will cater for even more protein to be used. And protein is the thing that is driving most of the discussions around sustainability and land use in agriculture. When we look at how this business developed, we came from a situation where agriculture was really local and low tech. It went to mid-tech industrial farming on a worldwide scale. What we see from a Microsoft perspective that this will revert back once to regional farming, very intensive but ecological friendly, and hyper intensive closed circuit high-tech farming. So these two will largely cater for the food needs of the world in the future. And in the meantime, we are in a world where digital innovation is going on everywhere, and there is a fast forward sign there now because digital innovation is even going faster right now due to the COVID crisis. Companies need to transform their workforce into working remotely, into using data and AI even better to service their customers and to be less reliant on people being somewhere at a certain moment in time. When you look at the process around this, which we call mostly digital transformation, it is not something that is new. Digital transformation is around value generation, and value generation is something that companies have always done in the past. The thing that has changed is that there is a lot of data available now. Data from sensors, we will get back to that, is gathered in all places around the world, in the areas that we know as citizens, but also in our personal life, but also in more agricultural circumstances. And the question is, of course, what do we do with this data? And that's where humans come in, where people come in order to make sure that we use the data in order to add value to those processes. And that's most important thing around digital transformation, is that we take along our people, that we take along our stakeholders, our shareholders, but also the ones that deliver to us. So it's all parties that need to come along in this digital transformation. And then when you look at the data, we see now data emerging in all places. So not only in rural or in cities, but also in rural environments. There are more and more data points coming from satellites, from drones, from machines, from cars, from people that have a phone in their pocket. So also there is a mesh of data starting to arise. The question is, of course, what do we do with it? And within Microsoft, we talk in this part, we talk about the digital feedback loop. And digital feedback loop is around gathering the data in different processes that you have in your organization. So everything around customers, or everything around your product, or everything around your operation, and make sure that you capture this data, analyze it, and bring the data streams from the different areas, so customers, for example, and operations, or customers and your product, into contact, and make sure that you create value from that. Data is of the utmost importance, and it is so much that AI is a need to analyze this data. And when we look at agriculture specifically, and at the products we are producing, it's more and more the product in itself, of course, but the information that comes along with the product is getting vital. So especially in, for example, supermarket environments, there is, in this case, a kilo of potatoes is worth more when the information comes along with that product. And that's about the heritage in order to transfer the value of the product towards the consumer. There are a lot of initiatives in this matter. So we see concepts which try to add value by the concept, by the way of marketing the vegetables in this case. And this is not the only concept. There are more and more of these arising, and creating a place in the market with a loyal set of buyers. Also from the farmers themselves, there are initiatives which are more easy to do now, because they have the distribution network. Supermarkets are more equipped to do regional distribution of products, and these claims from which are obviously marketing claims, are something that helps for these farmers to create more value for their products. Same thing for a milk machine producer in the Netherlands, Lely, which has a miniature factory to produce milk, whereby the heritage of the product is safeguarded. All these initiatives work in the modern world, but are not per se based on data. The data in itself is not the distinguishing factor. It is really also the physical distribution chain that is making the difference here. When we look at what the world is looking at and how to feed the world, we need to look at a food chain that is way larger than local initiatives. And that's where data comes in. The consumer wants to be informed, so he transfers this information need towards retailers. Retailers are sourcing their products in the processing industry or directly to trade and export with a question on data and how the product is produced. And the primary sector needs to cover that, needs to adopt that in their business processes and cater for the needs of, in the end, the consumer. It's not only the primary sector, so the farmers, but also farm inputs, so the ones that deliver to the farmer, like livestock etc., etc. So there is a chain which is really becoming inverted now, and where a lot of new parties are arising around the world, which work only with data to add value to this chain, not per se the physical aspect of this value. There's a lot of examples here. What I will share afterwards is a short description on where you can find it. We'll send that along with the thank you email in order to get a bit deeper understanding of all these initiatives. And they are quite interesting. So when we then look at the investments, for example, that are going on, it's for a fact in Silicon Valley, the amount of investments that are being done in agtech, so in agricultural technology, are now bigger, are outnumbering the investments that are being done in fintech. So you see a lot of appetite to invest. This is one of the examples. Blue River, a machine manufacturer which created an algorithm with cameras to recognize specific weeds in order to spray very precise on that weed, not to reduce 95% of pesticides, or in this case herbicides, in a field of lettuce, for example. They're being bought by John Deere for $600 million, which makes a compelling case for investing in this industry. And also in the grading area, we see a lot of things going on. Grading is more and more done optically, where every, in this case, potato, or in the other case, grain or corn is photographed multiple times to sort it. But when you keep this data, you can use it in the later process as well. So keeping this data and giving it a place in the value creation of your product becomes vital. And then we have sustainability. Sustainability is something that is getting a very important place in the world, where we see that neutral isn't enough anymore. We see companies, and one of those is Microsoft, proclaiming now that they will compensate in the future for the exhausts, in this case for carbon, that they made in the past. And I think it's something that will continue, where everybody starts to be very convinced that we need to create something that is solving a problem instead of actually polluting less as we do now. And very practically around that, Microsoft Netherlands, we work with a catering company called Hutton. We exhaust hundreds of tons of CO2 through our food use in our canteen, in our catering facilities, and we started to measure that in order to really dial the knots, to dial down this demand and dial down on our CO2 or carbon exhaust from the products that we are consuming here. And this is not something that we only see in these kind of environments, but also supermarkets are starting to do the same thing. They are starting to convey data towards their customers on the amount of CO2 that is needed to produce 1 kilo or 1 liter of the product in order for consumers to make a choice. So the need for data and transferring this data throughout the food chain from farm inputs all the way to retail, or in this case professional food outlet, is something that gets more and more important. And we think when you remove barriers in your organization, so think digital feedback loop, you unleash your organization, and that goes the same for agricultural companies as a part of a food chain. So, Marin, it's my pleasure to hand it to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jan, for this very inspiring introduction. Also, I think a great amount of cases that show the applicability of data, and even on a micro level. So here in the canteen, that you can really make a difference on the sustainability part as well. Very nice. Well, today I would like to tell you something about our project on FarmBeats, which is cool. An Azure Data Platform. Well, I think this is a product made by Microsoft that can be a very great addition to this story you tell here, yes. In gathering the data and making use of the data. And you explained that very well, that demand is growing and that we have to do that in a sustainable way. And also we must meet this growing demand in using only 5% more land. So, and if you ask me personally, I think we shouldn't even use 5% more land because we're already using a lot of land for agriculture. But it still boils down that we need to make more efficient use of the land that we use for agriculture, and that is where a lot of we can make a lot of steps as well. So basically, if you pin it down, we also see these three challenges that we're facing here. So one, we have the fast-growing population. We have a changing demand for resource-intensive foods like dairy products, and these products especially are very intensive on the sustainability part as well. So we should also focus on the sustainability, these sustainability issues that the market is facing right now. And we also think that innovation and digital transformation are actually vital in answering these challenges today. So we believe that there are three pillars that we can work on with our customers, and one is to gather the data in an efficient way and getting business insights out of it. The second one is to transform the way they do business, so not just focus on margins, because that is where it gets really tight and even really nasty, because everyone is just trying to get the most profit out of it. But you could also think in a service kind of way of delivering and delivering value to your clients, to the farmers. Yeah. And the third one is to increase digital interactions in an efficient way with the farmers. So the farmers these days, they also have WhatsApp, and they would like to use digital channels to get in contact with the suppliers. And we think also using data, you can also get a lot of value back to the farmer, and I think that is also a thing that has been lacking as of yet. So if we look at the value chain and the agricultural organizations that we've been working with, they're really also on the left side of the spectrum that you told us about. Mm-hmm. So on the right we have the consumer who is asking for a certain change, for information on the products he or she is receiving. But on the left side we have a lot of customers, and we actually see that there are various platform initiatives such as FarmBeats among these suppliers and the customers. But it's kind of hard to get to a solution where the farmer is also getting value out of the data. So it's not just about getting the data from the farmer and making use of it yourself, but to have a platform for the farmer to make use of it himself or herself. That is an essential part that is missing. And another problem is that we see that the problem is very much approached from an IT perspective and not a business perspective. And what we mean with that is that the various platform initiatives, they do quite a lot of good work on maintaining a platform, but it's so hard to maintain it and keep it scalable. That there's less time to actually focus on the business case, the use case itself. So what FarmBeats offers is actually something that could help in this scenario, because FarmBeats is a data platform, and Microsoft will take care of the scalability of the resources, of the performance, even all those things you don't want to worry about as an agri supplier. And then you can focus with us on the applications and getting value out of the data itself. So that is where FarmBeats can really help our suppliers and our customers, I think. So with this, with our solution, we've focused on creating an app on a set of standards that FarmBeats offers, because this is also a big problem, is that every aggregator or every data supplier in the agricultural market has their own standards, and this is a problem we will not solve right away, but I think FarmBeats can really help there and set a set of standard definitions in which we can.
This challenge isn't unique for this sector, right?
No,
so I
of
think
course.
in all sectors we have seen, as soon as data transfer along value chains entered the sector, we saw a host of initiatives and thereby data formats and half standards arise.
Exactly.
So standardization is important, but that shouldn't stop us from starting.
I completely agree. And FarmBeats is a way to get those standards out there. I think with a technology giant like Microsoft behind it, that is something that could really help that problem forward. So if we have this set of standard definitions, the farmer will be more likely to get to share his data with the suppliers, and if he can get some value out of it more easily, and that will eventually strengthen the bond between the farmer and the supplier, and that is what we're aiming here. We're aiming at nice and very loyal customers, of course, also for the chain. So FarmBeats actually solves to dive a little bit more in what the platform can offer. FarmBeats solves 3 challenges. One is the no farm connectivity problem, where the farms are in the world are very often located at a very rural place, in which the sensor might be very far away from the actual farm, or well, from the cloud itself, just to say so.
No internet.
No internet also, so there's also slow cloud connectivity, and you do want a very good flow of data that is very reliable if you want to make any predictions or any suggestions to the farmer with that data. And then the third one is the middle one, which we can see in the slide here, is the precision mapping. So precision mapping is something we want to do. We want to, on a very individual basis, rate and watch the crops grow and treat them only if necessary. So that is where FarmBeats can also help. And I would like to zoom in on that third one, because that is where we focus on in our proof of concept, actually, that we've been doing with the Candelar. Because as you can see in the slide here, we're working with FarmBeats. We've put the solution to the test, and we've been working with the Candelar, which is a family business in the Dutch polder. And they have potatoes, onions, and they also have quite a healthy stock of healthy livestock, also milking cows. And we've been deploying soil sensors and various types of sensors. We've been using the satellite images and got all that data flowing into FarmBeats to create something of value for the farmer. So this is our real test case, that we built something that is of business value on top of it. So the aim here is to start advising on irrigation scenarios and on fertilizer use and treatment on certain fungi. So actually, the goals for the POC here are to reduce costs, because that is what FarmBeats can do by saving on sensors and on time, because the farmer doesn't have to walk the land anymore. And also to do this in a sustainable way, and to only treat when needed and fertilize responsibly. And then we also would like to improve the yield, and by treating only if a disease is likely to occur, then you might want to treat the crops, and in other scenarios you wouldn't want to do such a thing. So it all boils down to creating a balanced solution, on which on one hand we're giving the farmer insights in the state of his land, and on the other hand we're not demanding a high investment also. So how can FarmBeats help lower this investment, actually? So what we something like sensors and deploying sensors on the land is actually not new, but it has been quite costly, because you do need a lot of sensors to get the coverage that you would want to be able to predict, for example, soil moisture. Yeah. And this has quite a bit of a few disadvantages. For example, you have some physical constraints where you actually want to work the land, but there are sensors in the way. And obviously, having a lot of sensors is also quite expensive to maintain and to deploy, because also these sensors will not work forever. You will need new ones every now and then. So the fewer sensors you would need, the less costly actually your investment will be. So the question is, how do we then get coverage with sparse sensor deployment, as we call it, with FarmBeats? So what FarmBeats can do is we can actually combine aerial images and create a panoramic overview. There it is. And combine those images with the sparse sensor data that is generated with FarmBeats. And that will eventually result in a precision map. And I can imagine this needs a bit more explaining also. And you could actually formulate it as a learning problem. For example, in this field, what you can see on the slide here, we do have 2 sensors placed on the field. And then we actually use the data that is generated by the sensors to predict the soil moisture, for example, in between those sensors. So we do have the coverage that we would expect from if we have deployed a lot of sensors, but on the other hand, we didn't need to invest in those that great amount of sensors to get this coverage. And currently, FarmBeats offers this for various attributes such as pH and soil moisture. Yeah. And that's another thing which you can see here is that the platform will extend. There will be more measurements available, and the same logic will apply to different types of measurement that you could generate with FarmBeats.
Because what we also see, of course, is a lot of machine manufacturers equipping their machinery with all kind of sensors, the sprayers, the fertilizers, but also other row crop equipment is starting to measure all kind of stuff. Is that something that that is also that you can also input?
Yes. So currently the platform offers about 30 types of measurements that you could ingest into FarmBeats. And we see that this is rapidly expanding. Even when we started, there were a lot less types of measurements that were supported. And then also you're kind of touching an interesting point, because you would also, if you know the soil moisture and you want to treat some places on the land, you would you would want to generate a sort of a map for the machine to work the land in a task. Only on those a task map. So that is where the chain will come together, and you could really tighten those connections between all those different aspects that you're working on actually. So what is FarmBeats then eventually generating is it offers some kind of interface, which you can see on the slide here, which shows where you have deployed your sensors. And then it also shows some basic graphs of the types of measurements that you are measuring. So this could be humidity, this could be soil temperature, this could be pH, NDVI, some vegetation indexes that are generated through the satellite images, all of which are gathered inside FarmBeats, and you could have some nice map representations out of the box. In the FarmBeats interface, and you could also set some alerts on it. For example, send an email to the farmer if a threshold is reached, because he or she needs to do some irrigation, or all that types of information and alerts. And I've already told you about, so if you don't like the interface of FarmBeats, then it's of course nice that you have generated all this data, and you could actually use your business applications suite. You could create a Power App on top of it. You could create Power BI dashboards on top of it. You could combine it with your business data using Power BI or another visualization tool that you might have. And that is of course very interesting, that you have a standardized schema with all the definitions of the various measurements you're taking, and you can build on top of that. And if you have a different kind of situation, you would, but you're still measuring soil moisture, it would be in the same. The data would be organized in the same way, so it would be more easy to build another thing on top of it. So that's very, very interesting. And So you could create, for example, a Power BI dashboard which is shown here that shows the soil moisture, maybe a disease risk. So a score, you can see a score of 1, which says, okay, we're currently not really facing any disease threats. But you could also have a score of 5, which maybe requires an action on the farmer's side of things. So, and of course, you could also deliver the insights through an app, because that is where the farmer will probably not log into your Power BI tenant. Maybe he will, but you could also offer it in a different kind of way.
It needs to be easy consumable.
It needs to be easy consumable. So what we've done is we've also created an app based on the data that FarmBeats offers. So what I would like to do is I would like to take you through a quick demo of the app that we've delivered. So I'm going to try and screen share here from my mobile phone to put it on the screen directly.
Okay. So again, if you are viewing this now and you have any questions, please post them to us. Then we can weave them into to our discussion.
So once we open the app, we can immediately see we have a kind of a welcome screen, and we can immediately see some very nice KPIs about the fields that are okay from our perspective. You can see 92% of the fields are currently in a good state and don't require any actions. You could have the weather forecast, of course, because weather is another type of data that FarmBeats can easily ingest. So that's very important, of course, to be able to predict certain things that might be certain actions that might be necessary on the land in the near future. We can also see some open alerts. So there have already been some alerts that we might want to take a look at and take an action on. And then we could also, for example, have some nice news that we would, as an agri supplier or a partner for the farmer, would be wanting to share with the farmer. So any company news that you think is interesting for a certain farmer, or maybe even new functionality on this app, of course, this would be very nice to have. And then we could also have some very concrete suggestions that the farmer might have to do on this land. So, for example, we would maybe we want to fertilize the field with some extra potassium. So potassium is another of the measurements that FarmBeats can accept, actually. So there you kind of have, in this home screen, you kind of have all the information on a very global level that you might want to see as a farmer. So looking at the open alerts, for example, we see that the soil moisture has been below a certain level. We have been having quite a dry period here in the Netherlands, and then you can see it might have been dropping below a certain threshold, but it could also be too high, and then you would also receive an alert, of course, all based on the data that is generated by FarmBeats. And well, here you have an overview of the fields. Just one more translation maybe, which is nice for the livestock market, because this is very crop based. I realize that, but of course these KPIs could also be the status of the animals in your barn, or maybe the silos, whether they are filled or not with feed. So you could easily make the translation as long as you gather the data. And what we see now is that FarmBeats is developed from a crop perspective, but we're already in the talks with the product team to extend it for the livestock market, because this is a market we're very active in, and we can see that the same need is also there, applicable there. So looking at the individual fields of the Candelar, we might also want an overview of, okay, which of the fields are actually okay right now and which of the fields might not be okay. And we can see one actually giving a red dot indicating that there's something going on there at least. And if you want a different view, we can also look at the map view, where we can easily see, okay, which one of the fields is currently really endangered, to say really requires an action, and which ones of the fields are currently okay. So we can just easily toggle between those screens. And then looking at one of the specific fields, I've now clicked on the field A, which showed the red dot. We can also see the various levels that we are currently gathering from FarmBeats. So we can see the soil moisture on a certain percentage, and we see that it's gone up. So that's nice. So maybe we don't. It has been quite actually the last few days. It has been raining quite a lot, and it's not above the threshold anymore. But we could also look at the soil temperature, for example. We could look at the disease pressure, which is again the risk of a certain fungus, the Phytophthora. I have to always have difficulty pronouncing it, but we can see that the disease pressure is high or low, and maybe we want to do an action on this. And then some various other screens is that we can see, okay, we're looking at a certain soil type, for example. For example, the field we're currently monitoring is on heavy sea clay, and that requires different types of actions on different thresholds than other types of soil. So it's all about bringing that data that you have to something valuable for the farmer. Yeah. So he can easily plan his crops here. So we see that there are now potatoes, but we can also see that sugar beets and the maize and flower bulbs have also been planted in the past few years. And we can also see some notes, okay, after dry winters, first irrigate and then plant potatoes for better start results. So the farmer can just add some notes. And this is data that you can use in your business operations. That's very important, of course. And if we look at the actions, maybe we want to treat preventive against a certain disease, or and then we can also see the reasons behind it, because the soil moisture is on a certain level, and we see that the weather prediction is also going a certain way. And if this is all too overwhelming, I think I haven't touched the last part, is where you create a digital interaction channel for the farmer. You could also integrate this with Power Virtual Agent, for example, to get the conversation starting. And maybe you would first want a bot to first get the first question to your farmer, but your farmer might then ask a specific question that the bot doesn't know, and it will just the communication will then go to an agent who can advise on the right type of fertilization, and he can say, or she can say, hey, you have to use this product to get the right treatment on your crops. So I think in short, the app is kind of it's an overview for the farmer, in which he can do all his daily basics operations, and it's all based on the FarmBeats data, which is in the end it's quite nice for him to be able to monitor from home actually the status of his farms. And you can also integrate this data with CRM, of course, if you want to integrate certain values that are interesting for your specialists that work with CRM. Then you might also want to show some of these values, or the Power BI dashboard that I showed earlier, to be able to really proactively engage with the customer.
Okay, there's a question on this, specifically on what you showed. What is the Ask Expert functionally? So I think, how does it functionally work?
How does it functionally?
Yeah, who is the expert? Probably.
Who's the expert?
I guess that is the question behind it.
Of course. So in this scenario, the farmer is asking the question to a specialist that might be the outside sales. How would you call it? The trustworthy face that the farmer already knows.
The trusted advisor.
So trusted advisor is a very good term for that, I think.
And that could be a supplier, or it could be somebody who buys from an agronomist that buys from the farmer, or maybe even an advisor.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the thing is, you want to route that conversation to the right person. If it's a very basic question, you might also want to route it somewhere else, and that doesn't require the trust relationship that the trusted advisor has. But in this case, you needed a very specific you asked a very specific question, and this trusted advisor might have been there last week, for example. So he or she really knows what's going on, and then you would want that person to ask to answer the question.
This is specific. The answer is now specific for one farm or one farmer.
Yeah.
Could you also foresee that you will elevate that, and that you will get an aggregated answer which is valid in a region or maybe on a national level?
Of course, this is very interesting. The more people that are making use of the same standardized schema, the more easy it is to get some overview insights, and then you could potentially ask questions. So how am I doing compared to other farmers, without naming them, but then at least the farmer would have kind of an idea on where he's or she is standing relatively to
others. And those are probably pretty specific. So these are for a certain crop where it's aggregated around that crop, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thanks.
So that's the demo then. I'll just. I can't switch, but it's all right. So in short, we've been working at the FarmBeats solution at the Kandelaar, and the benefits for the farmer include the soil. I have to press this. In short, the benefits for the farmer include delivery of soil and vegetation insights, aiding him in the water management decision making, and helping him in detect and predict fungal diseases affecting his crops, and therefore his produce. And all of this he can do from home rather than walking through the fields, of course. And then for the customer agri-suppliers to collect the essential farm data and focus on services and use cases upon it. That really improves the personalized advice that the agri-supplier can give, and you can this chat channel is one of the things that could be of help there. So the suppliers can then focus more on the can really increase the loyalty, because the advice is really personalized.
Yeah.
That's the main point here. And if you translate these to the livestock market, you could, for example, get insights on the grass that is growing, because the protein discussion that you talked about is also very much going on. You could have instead of animal insights, you could still look at the responsible use of water, fertilizers on the grass, but also you might have suggested actions on the animals instead of on the fields, on the crops. And in the end, the benefits are the same, because you can improve the contact that you have with the farmer, rather than having the farm visits occasionally, whenever the specialist has a gut feeling that it's time again to go there. Instead, you can proactively monitor everything that's going on inside the farm and take actions upon that.
Okay.
And then, of course, I would also would like to thank our partners. So there it is, our sister company, eCraft, Apps for Agri, our sensor supplier, and Dronewerkers, who have been doing drone flights for us, all of which generated data.
Cool.
We can get into the system.
Okay. Thank you, Marin. For some, we'll switch to a couple of questions to Peter, who has been working quite intensively with the Kandelaar, so the farm in the Flevopolder. So first of all, Peter, which challenges do you see in general at livestock and vegetable or crop growing farms?
Thanks, Jan. Well, in general, I see two main pillars in the challenges. One is, as pointed out earlier during this webinar, more and more data is becoming available. There's more calculating power, so it's becoming easier to use this data and transform it into information. On the other side, there are some developments within the agricultural sector, which is consolidation of farms, changing legislations, which require more administrative work by the farmer. And you see that it's still harder to keep an overview on your farm just to fulfill your requirements and to handle all information that you get. And on top of that, the main challenge here is to work more sustainable, more efficient to feed all mouths in the world. And basically, these three come together in a big challenge: how to keep an overview and how to do the right thing at the right moment.
Yeah. Traditionally, how does a normal farmer without all these tools deal with that? Is there somebody helping him? What did you identify as the people who are helping a farmer with these challenges?
Well, that's a nice question. It's good to go back in time, some 70 years or something, when farming in the Netherlands at least became more intensively, and the farmers' suppliers were helping the farmers in using the materials and feed they supplied, and using that on the best and most efficient way. So the farmer was never alone in his challenges. Well, all developments in farming, consolidations, worked also out. Everything had to be done more efficiently, where in the past a technical consultant would visit the farm every week or every 2 weeks. That's not efficient anymore now. Visiting also brings some risks with diseases, etc. So you are looking for other ways to help the farmer in evaluating all the information and make the correct decisions and do the right things at the farms. And then when you look at FarmBeats, it fulfills the needs of the consultant at the kitchen table, who is still there, but who has a very powerful tool in bringing this information to the farmer, tailor-made via, for example, FarmBeats.
Because it's not plug and play, right? It's not something that you put on. What's the chance that an individual farmer is going to implement it, or actually who are the ones that you foresee that are going to use FarmBeats as a solution for creating more efficiency in the value chain, so who is the actual company or organization that is going to buy and use the system?
I'm quite strongly convinced that it will not be a farmer, and it will always be the organization of a supplier to the farmer, or even a buyer from the farmer, who will take the initiative to put up and set up the platform so that the farmer can use the data, get information for it, and if he has a question, he can contact his supplier or buyer and have a meaningful connection with him to solve the problem. Yeah. So it's always a cooperation of the farmer and his supplier or buyer, but because it's quite a technical project, the initiative will always be at the supplier or buyer of the farmer, and the farmer will benefit from it.
Yeah, and by that, in the end, it will be very important that this remains an open system, because when a farmer is never growing one crop, at least not in the Western European circumstances, which creates the need, because when the supplier or the buyer they are probably focused at one product. They are not multi-product buyers, for example. So then it's very important to be open and to make sure that that these platforms, because you have FarmBeats, but there are bound to be or start similar platforms, that these can communicate to each other as well.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think as also as Microsoft, as we are the de facto owner of this platform, we strive to go for open standards, to be able to also connect these kind of platforms together in order for the farmer not to have 10 dashboards in the end, because then we are past our goal again, and then we are not solving for a problem, we're actually creating one.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Spot on. Yeah.
Cool. Guys, we are coming to the end of this webinar. Thank you very much for helping us out here, and for making sure that we transpose what we've learned at the Kandelaar. There's probably much more to learn and to hear. So connect to CRM partners if you want to know more about it. Wait, there's one question. There are actually two questions coming in, so I'll go back.
Okay.
So one of the questions is, who owns the collected data? So I think it's a very valid question, and we have seen multiple companies doing the wrong things here. So who owns the data that comes in? Do I ask that to Peter? Yes.
It's a very hard question. So thanks for passing it to me. And it's not a new question. Ownership of data is that's very hard, and the data, of course, is generated at the farmland, and that might imply that the farmer is also the owner. This is the owner of the data, but you can transform data into information. For example, if you want to try to benchmark, then data of more farms is aggregated and pinpointed to a specific situation. So I can't answer the question. It's a very valid question indeed, but if I have to give an answer now, I would say that the data is from the farmer, and when implementing FarmBeats, it's very good to make solid agreements on data ownership, and that anyone can benefit from the information generated by all farmers' data.
If I may add to that, I think it's also there are quite some initiatives also here in the Netherlands that focus really on this data sharing part, and FarmBeats doesn't take that need away. So we're also looking into working together with those partners, because in the end, I think you make a very valid point, Peter. I'm sorry. That the data is owned by the farmer, but if you give enough, if you can generate enough value for the farmer, then it won't be a problem for the farmer to share on the right moment, and also take back the permissions if he thinks or if she thinks he's not helped.
It's I have a view which comes from a different industry, where we see a little bit the same movement. Where you look at healthcare industry, patient data belongs to the patient. I think a lot of countries are very strong pronounced onto that, and I think this is the same. So data that is from the farmer belongs to the farmer, and he or she can decide what he or she does with that data. Who has the permission? When this permission is ending, you can withdraw it, but you can also create an ecosystem where there is actual value creation around this data. And I think this is the reason why farmers should be interested or are interested to share data if they get something back. So the data is theirs. The platform might not be theirs. The information creation from an algorithm might not be theirs either, or is. So it depends on what type of data, whether it's anonymized or not, whether it's shareable, and whether the farmer actually gets value from sharing this data. And I think that everybody will see that when, for example, a product in the end in a retail situation delivers more value, and that a part of that is being paid to a farmer for his product, it's a very clear-cut business case. But when the data is used to commercialize by, for example, a supplier or somebody else without the farmer getting anything of that, that is a recipe for not adopting these kind of things. So we are pretty strongly we are pretty strongly convinced that this is the case, and so the ownership of data really lies with the farmer, and he or she can decide what to do with it. Yeah. That concludes our webinar for today. So thanks again, Peter. Thanks again, Merwin. Thanks again for the people who ask questions, because that really helps. Anything to add, guys?
Well, I think we're taking a step here again towards a more efficient value chain, basically, for the agriculture, and I hope we can work on a specific case to make this even more concrete, of course.
Yeah.
And thank you for having us.
Okay, thank you. So goodbye. See you next time. You'll get an email with the slides. So see you next time. Bye bye.
Okay.